Hello, my name is Drew Pickens, and in this video we are going to be discussing the concept of understanding the decision-making unit in an organization. The decision-making unit, or the DMU, is a collection of individuals who participate in the buying decision process for any organization. There are a number of key players in this process, namely the decision maker, approvers, users, influencers, and champions, and each one of these members plays a different role in the buying process. Understand that organizations can employ any number of different buying processes or methods or combinations of members depending on the culture of that organization and many other factors. So we're going to look into those different roles that make up the DMU today, and there will be some follow-up emails that will look into each one of these roles in a deeper level. So this is going to give a broad understanding of what a DMU is and how these roles operate and how they complement each other. So the first one we'll look at is the role of decision maker. Now the decision maker can be either a person or a team of people, but they are the person or the group that takes responsibility for the decision. So that means that they take credit when it goes well and they're held accountable when it goes wrong. And this is really about the idea of choosing to change or choosing a new provider or choosing a new partner. So making that choice is what they're held accountable for. Understand too that deciding not to decide is indeed making a decision. So who decides to keep things the same, for instance, and employ no change? That will be the decision maker. They take responsibility for not changing. This is the person that looks good when the decision goes well or the choice goes well, and looks bad when that choice or decision fails. So there is confusion here. A lot of people who perform the role of approver can look like a decision maker, and we're going to talk about approvers here in a minute. But approvers generally don't take responsibility for the choice. That's what the decision maker does. They are the ones that make the decision to choose someone. They make a choice, and then they are accountable, good or bad, for if that choice works well or not. The next role we'll look at is the influencer. The influencer exerts pressure on the decision maker and users. They usually have some measurable criteria that needs to be met. I use this analogy that the influencer walks around with a measuring stick and measures everybody against that criteria. So, you're too short, you're too small, you're too tall, whatever they're measuring you by, right? And that measuring stick is the criteria within which everyone needs to be met. There is someone that gives the influencer that criteria. That person is the decision maker or the approver. So the person that walks around with a measuring stick measuring everything may or may not be the decision maker if they didn't decide on the criteria. That criteria is usually given to them by somebody else, and that somebody else would be someone in a decision maker or approver role. And influencers often pass themselves off as decision makers because their no can hinder you or delay you, and their yes sends you through. So it looks like a decision maker, but it's really performing the role of a gatekeeper function here, because that criteria is letting people pass. What you want to understand is, where does that criteria come from? So in a future video, we will look at influencers more closely and understand the whole idea of influencing and evaluating based on a measurable criteria, and understand really how that is not the decision-making process. It's just a measuring process. The next we'll look at here is the user. The user is the person or team that uses your product or service, right? They're the ones that are actually using whatever it is that you sell. So it might be the service you provide or a product that you sold. And their primary interest is that the product or service works well and is easy to use. Users can make noise when your product doesn't work well or isn't easy to use, and that can cause the decision maker to consider a change, and it can hold up the implementation of a change to your solution. Now, the big difference between a user and an influencer is a user generates noise that in of itself doesn't cause the decision maker to make a change. It may cause them to consider change, but not to make a change or really influence what the change is. The pressure that an influencer gives is a much different than noise. Pressure is received differently by a decision maker. A decision maker can choose to ignore noise. They can't ignore pressure forever. So pressure causes them to do something different. The noise causes a consideration of change. And there is a subtle difference, and again, we'll look at users in a future video in more detail. The next role we'll look at is the coach or the champion. Champions are interested in seeing you succeed. They can be inside or outside your prospective client. Coaches can be in your organization as well, and they can champion your cause. Champions are such when they can supply you with information and support all along the way. It's really great when you have champions in your prospect. Maybe they came there from another business you used to do business with, and they've come over to this company, and they've brought favorability for you there, and so they're helping you along the way. The ultimate combination is when you have a champion that's a decision maker, right, or an influencer. That's really a good thing. But create champions whenever you can. These are people that can supply you with information, intelligence. They provide support. They'll tell you how to navigate the organization. They'll tell you how the organization works. And champions are probably the most valuable thing to identify in any kind of organization. There's someone there who can help you along the way and wants to see you succeed. Approvers. This is the person that signs the contract or gives permission to make a change, but they let the decision maker own the change or the decision making process. They don't take responsibility for it. They release the funds. They release permission to make the change. The decision maker decided what to change to. That's a big difference. So often an approver can be an executive, a purchasing department, a business owner, etc. Think about a time maybe when you've sold something to someone, but they had to get someone else's approval to make this change, right? They decided that you were going to be the one they were going to go with, but someone else had the criteria, or someone else sent you the contract that needed to be signed. That someone else is in an approver role. So approvers release the funds and ensure compliance. That's a very different thing than making a decision or deciding who to change to. They generally don't really care who you change to as long as it's within the budget or they can comply with their internal process. They're really more about the policy being adhered to and being within budget. A very unique role to consider is that of executive influencer. An executive influencer is someone who exerts a high-level influence over the decision-making process, but they're not involved in the decision itself. And when we say high level, we mean 30,000-foot level influence. So we call this a soft influence. This is a different kind than the regular influencer role. The decision to change or go forward can be made without the executive influencer's involvement. This is like the executive who drops into town and says, have you ever considered brand X? I used to use brand X at my previous company. You ought to give them a look, and then they leave. And so as a result, the decision maker looks at brand X when they may not have looked at brand X. Now they may not decide to use brand X, but they took a look there because the executive influencer dropped that name. And the decision maker wants to be able to respond back to the executive at some point and say, we looked at brand X and it didn't work for this reason. But they got the look. They got the look because of this high-level influence. So it's not based on any criteria. It's generally based on someone's preference or past history. And so this high 30,000-foot level soft influence can cause decision makers to look at a certain direction or maybe look away from a certain direction just based on the influencer's level in the organization. So as you see, there are different levels or different roles to be played. We're going to look at these in closer detail in further videos, in future videos, so be on the lookout for those. But understand that this decision-making unit is a collection of individuals that sit around this virtual table and all play a role in coming to a decision on who can be chosen when any kind of a buying decision takes place. The decision maker is getting noise from the users. They're getting champions that are championing someone's cause. Influencers are exerting pressure. Approvers are authorizing release of funds. Executive influencers are saying things that are trying to influence a decision to go in a certain direction because of some preference. And all of that, based on the culture and many factors in an organization, will shape how decisions are made. So it's very important to understand who these roles are, where they are, how it works in that organization, and then build a strategy to make sure that they're all satisfied. You are talking to these people whenever possible and understanding what the criteria is in that organization for any kind of a change or decision that might come down the line. So give a lot of thought, a lot of planning to the decision-making unit. Be prepared to look at this in further detail as you move forward, and the best you can be prepared, the better off you will be to make sure that someone doesn't get missed. So thank you for your attention, and good luck in your managing of decision-making units.